Good morning. Welcome. I'm your host, Bob Pace, and I'm here to talk about CPS and to take back our children. CPS stands for um, the child CPS. It stands for the Child Protection Services. It's a branch of social services that deals with our children, the protection of neglect and abuse, and also supposed to be family reunification. This morning, we're supposed to have on our show a guest named Nick, and he scheduled for last night, but rescheduled for this morning, and have yet to hear from him. So I'm going to go ahead and proceed without Nick, and hopefully, maybe one of you can call in and be a guest. There's several ways to interact with this podcast. This podcast is live. You found us on Facebook, and it's being broadcast on YouTube. The application is SteamYard. And there are several ways you can react with this podcast. One is you can just text a simple message. All I ask is your name and the city and state where you're calling from, so I get a general idea where the CPS case is from. And you can ask your questions. You can make a comment. It's open forum about CPS matters, Child Protection Service matters. Anything related to that, it's open for that. And so you can text in right now. We have a little over 58 minutes of show time here, our podcast time. If you like to speak right now and you don't want to text and you want to really talk about your story, it's open right now. All you do is call in 626-698-0990. That is my office phone number, and it's live during the podcast. So please call in that, and I can put your on voice, on speakerphone, and everybody will hear you. They won't see you. Now, if you want to go a step further and be a guest on the show, then you can email my producer, Grace, at vincentwdavis.com. She's my production manager, and she'll put you in how to get on to the show and pick one of my 14 shows. I'm on 7 days a week, morning and night. And I'm here to try to help you relate in my stories and give you advice of how to fight CPS and some general rules. The importance of the event here. So you can text in or you can call in at 626-698-0990 or email Grace at vincentwdavis.com. And that message is related below my screen. My phone number is on the screen. Now, one of the first rules that I have that you need to think about. All your potential new clients are out there trying to figure out the spaghetti of this nightmare spice you're in. CPS is not user-friendly. They are very deceptive. They're not transparent. They're not warm. They're not inviting. They're not hospitable. And they don't believe in family reunification. Their sole purpose, and this is from my experience and from over 100 some people have been on here across the country, that they're strictly to make money off your child. Once they open the case, the money starts coming in for each child. They get over $20,000 per month per child. And that's a lot of money. It's $1 billion business here where my CPS was heard in Southern California. It's so bad. I mean, the top dog or the director sits Taj Mahal of a building, like the Taj Mahal of India. But this one is emerald green, like the Wizard of Oz's home. The Wizard of Oz is in the Oz. Anyway, It's going to be a horrific, terrible experience, and you need all the help you can. Now, I want you to visualize if you're doing open heart surgery, you have something wrong with your heart. You need to have it repaired or replaced a part. So, getting an attorney to help you is like doing open heart surgery because that's how bad CPS is. It's very difficult to navigate through them, around them, in them, and very hard if you do not know all the pitfalls. So, my rule number one is that you get an attorney. And what I mean by attorney, just like an open heart surgery, you get yourself a professional doctor. A doctor has gone to medical school, that has got an internship, that's been a doctor and familiar with open heart surgery. Because that's what you need. I cannot express how complicated CPS is. It's like you're Alice in Wonderland falling in the rabbit hole. There's so many twists and turns and blocks and stops. That's going to drive you insane. It drove me insane. I've been doing this for 14 years. And, my family's never been the same. Rachel Cooper just texted me, what about if you can't afford an attorney? That is such a good question. I find that my show attracts all the people that somehow are destitute and really don't have the money it takes to fight. And I know your pain and anguish. In fact, CPS preys on you kind of people. Why? Because they can't fight a good attorney. That's what I'm telling you about rule number one. You need to get an attorney. And I didn't. I had a similar problem. I just recently lost my job and I didn't have the money to finance attorneys. So I know what you're going through. And I had to sell my home to get the money to get an attorney to get my kids back. And the attorney I got was Vincent Davis. His office, Vincent W. Davis Associates, sponsors this podcast. It's a law firm with many attorneys in different areas: immigration law, criminal law, dependency law, you name it, he's got it. But the one that you're into is dependency law, family law, and juvenile law. That's the one that you're into. And you have to really think about how important your family is. I know it is. And I know that this show is because you guys are potential new clients, PNCs. And you don't have the money. And I know how hard it is. But right now, Vincent W. Davis will talk to you. He is a professional dependency, family law, juvenile attorney. He knows how to fight CPS. He's gotten kids back from CPS. And he's offering a consultation right now for 30 minutes for $49.99. I know that is a price. It's a lot of money, $50. But at least he'll give you the strategies and how to fight CPS and how to get your children back. Because without an attorney, it's like doing open heart surgery with a layman or somebody that is not a professional. Now, you're probably telling your case is far enough that you have a dependency court and they give you a public defender. Well, that public defender, most of them that I've dealt with, including myself personally, are very case loaded. They have over 20 cases that they're dealing with at one time. Plus, they're very young. They're not going to really fight for you. They're in with the social workers, attorneys. They're in with social workers. They're in cahoots with the judge. The whole system is corrupt. The court is a kangaroo court in my case. I had a judge that had no background in dependency law. My judge had nothing but background in how to repair cars and the cost of collisions and fighting property damage. But he knew nothing about, children, knew nothing about family reunification. And in my case, it took advantage of me because I didn't have an attorney. And for a year and a half, I fought him, and I'm a very intelligent, college-educated man. I did not believe or perceive that my constitutional rights and my civil rights would be violated. You have two things: your constitutional rights and your civil rights. Constitutional rights deal with the law. One of the amendments of the Constitution, the 14th Amendment, has a lot in there for social services they can't do and do. Now, I know in the news media, the 14th Amendment has been talked about the conspiracy by Donald Trump to lead a nation against arms. It's been used a lot, but there's a lot more than just that. And I'm not here to debate whether that was right or wrong. That was a riot, and he wasn't present there carrying the American flag up the steps of the Capitol. There's a group of very sincere people that wanted to exercise their rights, and they went a little bit too extreme. It's very hard and frustrating. I know you guys are very hard and frustrated because you got a case you don't know how to work out, and you need an attorney. But if you think about Mr. Davis, he's a professional. He has fought against CPS and won. He's gotten kids back. He's a trial attorney. He's also sued CPS constitutionally, statewide and also federal-wide. So it behooves you. The best money you would spend, the $49.99, would be to talk to him for 30 minutes. All you need to do is call in to 888-6582. That's my other office number, and tell them that Bob Pace sent you and that you want a consultation with Mr. Davis. Also, when you talk to Mr. Davis, make sure you tell him that Bob Pace sent you. It's very important he knows that. He doesn't understand why people call in and they don't schedule a time with him. I tell him I tried to. 14 times a week I talk, several times during the show, about getting an attorney. And you're going to be dead meat in the courtroom, especially if the judge is not good, because you have all these social workers, attorneys. You'll have so many. The children will have attorneys, and it's a big, big, big mess. And you'll want to wait to dependency court, because that's where they come up with a plan, which will be so hard to follow. They hope you don't, so they can have your children adopted into foster care and then collect money for your children until, the children reach 18. It's really sad. You parents, I feel for you. I know what you're going through. I went through it too. But you need to do that rule number 1 and get that attorney. You need to. It'll save your mind. It'll bring back your family and everything else. You need to borrow the money from family or friends, or be creative. If you own a home, take a credit line. If that doesn't work, then sell your home. I had to. I didn't want to sell my home. I worked 40 years and CPS ruined me. I was a normal 60-year-old man working at a career job, and through no fault of my own, my job was terminated. It wasn't terminated by my choice or my company's choice. It was terminated to the fact that the state of California was going bankrupt and had to write IOUs for several public contracts I had to do work for the state of California. And I thought that I could get help from the banks, but the banks were so skeptical of IOUs with the state of California. They said, no, we can't help you. So I was trying to get credit so I could start the jobs and pay my bills. I had bills. I had mortgage payments. My mortgage payments were exceptionally high. I did not realize till I lost my job how high they were. But I had a first and a second mortgage payment. I had a predatory loan from a lender that documented my income, that documented the documents so I could qualify. I couldn't understand how I qualified for something that and plus that they gave me a credit line on top of my first mortgage. So I had the perfect storm brewing. The banks, were going under from about 2007 from predatory loans because they gave away too many loans. The lenders were interested only in the profits they get from making the loans. In fact, the guy that did my loan is still not in business with the same company, but working for another company, still giving out false loans. It's still there. So when the banks went down, I had a retirement in my work. I had 40 years of retirement, and it lost 50% of its value due to the fact it was invested in stock and bonds by my company. They had a group of individuals that thought it best to pick, and they picked the wrong bonds and so forth and stocks. So I took a hit. I lost a lot of money. Over $500,000 I lost. On top of that, I had a predatory loan. I had $650,000 on my first and $300 on my credit line. That is $950. It's $1 million debt. And the home at that time was worth pretty close to $2 million. And so I needed the assets. So I bit the bullet. And because CPS did not get really involved, they got involved first because what had happened is that the alleges complaints that came in were from family members. There's two groups of people that make alleges. They're the lay people and the professionals. And these lay people were my wife's mother and father and brothers and sisters that were constantly for years trying to get our children. They tried to abduct their children because they just hated their daughter so much. They're upset because I married her and upset they didn't come to our wedding. And we've been together for 31 years, coming up on 32. And right now it's a very rocky marriage because this CPS has really hurt us as a family. Yes, we got back 2 of our 3 children, but 2 of our children are really hurt bad. They're struggling with all kinds of demons and issues. CPS I thought was an organization that wanted to help others. I thought social workers, the social workers were there to help you with food, medical if your times are need, if you qualify. And, they have been disappointed to me in all areas. So I'm telling you right now that as I speak, I hurt for you. I feel your pain. You're so frustrated because you don't have the money to fight CPS. You don't have it and you want your children back. And somehow you're going to have to get that money. Somehow you're going to. As I say, after your meeting with Mr. Davis for 30 minutes, you're going to want to retain him. And somehow he can help you, or maybe you can be creative and borrow it from your family or friends or take a credit line or something. And he'll fight in Southern California. That's where his office is. But he'll fight in Northern California and all the 50 states. He goes to Oklahoma. He goes to Arizona. He go over. You people call in and have told me you've talked to Mr. Davis. And how he's really great. You've seen Mr. Davis's podcast and how he tries to give you advice. He gives a lot of pro bono advice. If he could, he'd do it all for free. He tries to. He feels for the people like I do. Now, I'm not an attorney. I'm just talking because I've been in the trenches. I've been in your shoes. I've seen the horrors of dealing with social workers that are corrupt. And I'm talking from the top dog all the way down. Their managers, and it went in one ear, went out the other. They violated my constitutional rights so badly. When they took my children in 2015, after 5 years of attempting to take my children, They use deception. They will use the police, and the police are like pawns, and they dupe the police, thinking there's imminent danger that they have to see your home. You see, child abuse and child neglect is well talked about. If you look at Google, there's a lot of information about that, and it has to be imminent danger. It means life or threat is imminent danger. In my case, you're probably, well, what in the hell do you have imminent danger in your home? Well, a perfect storm had happened because then my parents were dying at the same time that CPS took my kids, that I had lost my job, that I had a, a bad loan, that I'd lost all my retirement. And on top of that, I used all my parents' inheritance because they were dying. And I love my parents enough, and they asked me, can you help us get rid of our belongings and get our home sold and so forth because we know we're going to go. And they didn't want to have that burden left with anybody. And I was the closest family member. But I told them I'm without a job. I need help and stuff like that. And I took their belongings. And it was a bad mistake on my part because I cluttered my home. You see, I had a nice home, a big home, but they did too. And with their belongings and my belongings, it started becoming where things were stacked and it was cluttered. And so CPS says, oh, that's neglect. Those boxes could hurt the children. My children were 9, 12, and 15. They were taller than the stacked boxes. They had their own separate bedrooms, nicely clean and organized. Our house was really nice. The bedrooms were uncluttered and so forth. It was a living room and the family room where I had the kitchen was nice. We had food in the kitchen. They're well fed, but my in-laws said, no, you're not paying utility bills. I brought out all the utility bills, show they're paid in full. I even showed CPS before I brought my belongings to the home. My home. They found nothing wrong with it. They found a refrigerator. I had 2 refrigerators, one in the kitchen, one in the garage. And I had cupboards full of food. And they could see that I fed my children. They could see my kids went to school because, of their grades. They were doing A's and B's. I personally drove my kids to and from school. My wife drove them to and from school. My wife helped her with their homework. We were very much involved as parents. We went to school at open house. We went to school for teacher conferences. We went to school to hear recitals and plays that they're in. We got them involved in the community with Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. We did AYSO soccer. Both me and my wife were referees. And so we were participating. We weren't just dropping kids off. We were a loving family. In fact, our dates, me and my wife, consisted of taking the children out for dates. They always came along with us. We never had any mom and dad dates. Our children are a main concern. Our children are a main concern. We did not smoke, and we certainly did not drink in front of the kids. We didn't do drugs. They were clean and bathed. They had clothes. They had warmth. They had good grades. My son at 15 was in a STEM program. That means he takes one science class, one technology class, one engineering class, and one math class. He wanted to be a robotic engineer. He wanted to work for the space industry. He was interested in artificial intelligence. And, of course, with the mission to Mars. And my younger son, who was only 9 at the time, was still in elementary school, had expressed some interest in space when he came to middle school. And he was geared in a STEM program. And he has been going to a private school. He's now 18. And he's taken a STEM curriculum of a science and technology, engineering, math class. So he's all set to go. He, wants to be an astronaut. He wants to go to the Naval Academy. He wants to go to Pensacola, Florida, and get his wings. And then from there, he wants to apply to Edwards Air Force Base as a test pilot and then be selected as an astronaut so that he can be one of the astronauts that flies to Mars. That's my young son at 18. Those are his goals. And my older son, who's 24 now, went through 4.5 semesters of college. And he wanted to be a scientist. In fact, he did his internship at Raytheon. His first job was at an internship at Raytheon, making good money in the summer months. Both my kids work. Both my kids help out the family. My kids are a loving family. Now, there's one family member that isn't part of us that was brainwashed and child trafficking by CPS. Yes, the word child trafficking is this. CPS is the only legal entity that does so. They do so. And they have hurt us as a family. You know, family reunification is trying to bring the family back together after a parent had a hiccup. Now, if they felt that my parents' belongings were neglect to my children, they could have said, hey, look, we'll help you get a storage unit. We'll pay for it. You can put stuff in storage and then maybe go through a couple boxes at a time, not the whole parents' 4,000 square foot of belongings that were collected for over 55 years in a marriage. I mean, that was a lot of belongings that I had in my home. And I had a solid job. I could work, but it's so hard at age 60, you lose your job. And then, you have CPS steal your children at age 65. And then 3 years later, I finally got my kids back, 2 of the 3 at age 68. And yes, I have found work, but I've also lost work because of my age. There's something about age that disturbs people. They think old people can't work. They think old people can't function. Well, mathematically, by the age I was born on, yes, I'm 74. But right now, I could be 44. I could be 44. I don't look 74. I don't act 74. I still love to surf, love to get my gills wet. I don't skateboard as much, but that's a good balance. Skateboarding, there's nothing wrong with that. I like walks along the beach. I live at the beach, and I want to take care of my family. I've done so. I have 6 children. I was married once before, and I have 3 older children, and they are doing well in society. There are no hiccups, no problems with them. I fed them, put them through college, and they're doing really great. One is a major in the Air Force working in JAG. Another one is a counselor working in a school district. Another one is a teacher working in a school district. All of them, and some of them have grandchildren. So I've done something right, my wife and I have. And unfortunately, my first marriage ended up in a divorce. Not that I wanted it. Not that I wanted it. And that was sad. My firstborn, I've not talked to her since she's been 3 months. It's not my choice. And it was not CPS involved in that case. But she's 23 now, and it's been 20 years since I last held her. And her last words to me is, Daddy, don't go. Daddy, don't go. That is a heartache. That is a heartache for anybody to suffer. And deal with CPS is a heartache. A lot of you told me things. You're in the birthing room giving birth to a child, and CPS walks in with the police and takes your children that you just gave birth to. It's still blood in the child has been cleaned. That's wrong. CPS does that. And that's not one incident, that's several incidents I've talked to on my podcast. They're not supposed to be in the hospital. They have to have a court order. They have to have a warrant. And that goes to my rule number 3. I'll talk in a few minutes. But rule number 1 is you need to get that attorney to stop all this madness. And I know it's a lot of money. I know it is, but it'd be well worth it. Well worth it. So here I am faced with the fact that I have to fight CPS. And at first, I tried to fight them with letters and emails and meetings. The children are taken from you. They first started in a shelter, a blockhouse building next to the dependency center in Southern California. Their play yard area was the juvenile prison, so they could be exposed to juveniles. That's not protection. In fact, in the yard, the play yard is infested with bees. There's a bee hive that could sting the children. And I'm allergic to bee stings, and I don't know if my young children are, but I hate for them to find out and die in CPS's hands. It was overcrowded. They didn't sleep together. There were strangers. The food was terrible. And they're in there for a week. And their idea of the school was to read a book. My 3 kids were brilliant. They wanted to learn. They were brilliant. And they're good loving. They don't know what's going on. That's another sad part, as you will experience, is the kids and you will never really talk to each other about what's going on. Or maybe they should have a get-together with counselors and social workers and lawyers. They have a meeting to talk about what is wrong with the family unit. Why do you feel so adamant about the father or the mother? What is wrong with you, mom and dad? What is wrong with you, children? They don't do that. They need to do that thing. That's my idea of family reunification, is once a week, have a meeting with the children and the parents to work out the differences, to do family reunification, to bring them back, to not have them interrupted so much in their life, instead destroy them and put crazy ideas in them. And it's wrong. It is really, really wrong. And what I'm telling you right now is that you're going to experience a lot of the same things. You're going to see twists and turns. And that is going to be hard on you. That's going to be hard on you. So I went and fought the case. I had my meetings with the director. I tried to see my children as much as possible. Every opportunity they gave us visits, but it started getting worse. First, the visits were unmonitored. Then they were monitored. Then there's accusations. There's even I never saw my daughter since she was 12. But there was some talk that she said, Dad's right there. Dad was not in the area. And then the stories started to fly. The family, the in-laws started making up stories about mom and dad or about dad. And even to this day, there's still stories out there generating that I don't understand. I don't understand what the goal or the purpose is. But right now, our daughter at age 12 divorced her parents and her brothers, and all the other family members, the aunts, the uncles, the grandparents. My mom and dad couldn't understand why our daughter would divorce them. They show no ill will. The grandparents show no ill will. The aunts and uncles didn't. It was sad. And where did she learn all this? Where did she learn all this at age 12? Not only did she divorce us, she couldn't face us in court. She could not face us in court. She was protected and held, and she had no monitor visits or any visits with her father. With her mother, she started to, but then her mother, she got disenchanted. And I went to the expense of renting a place for 6 months with no one living in it for the sole purpose of her to return home with her brothers. Sole purpose. I'd stay away from the place. I had my own place. I was double paying 2 places, and I had a job at that time. It was hard. If you can imagine paying for rent in Southern California at 2 places, it was expensive. It was over $5,000. It's just as much as my expense of my home was. And I was doing that with my job that I had. But since I have lost that job, I've had to go back to the one apartment. And of course, my daughter never took up the opportunity, even though I paid 6 months worth of rent, at $3,000. That's $18,000 I was paying for nothing. She was never given the opportunity. She went and had her birth certificate sealed so no one could see that she was born to us as her biological parents. She did her name change. Not only was that damaging, she gave away the name that we gave it to her, that her brothers, know her, that her family members know her. She changed her name. And both of my parents went to death, never knowing the outcome of her daughter. They loved our daughter. I loved her daughter. Her mother loved her daughter. Her brothers loved her daughter. But she has somehow maintained in her mind, with a lot of influence by family members that had no intentions of doing good. My wife found out a lot of things in CPS, how awful it was. She went to a lot of things that her parents would have been investigated by CPS. The CPS is evil. I'm telling you, they're not your friend. And don't let them dupe you to think they are your friend, because they're not. They're not your friend. So right now, my daughter is 21. I don't think I ever will see her. I love her daily. I say prayers to her. I text her unanswered messages. And I do want to see her. I wanted to fix up whatever's wrong with her. In fact, my older children have somehow turned against, because they believe now that certain awful things happen. I don't know why. But our oldest, the major in the Air Force, doesn't talk to his own mother. And what's so special about the oldest is that my wife was raped at age 15 because her parents didn't protect her. Her older sister, who was over the age 18, was too intoxicated at a concert to even protect her. And she was forcibly raped, and her first experience of sex was being pregnant. And she could have done abortion. It was legal where she was at. But she chose to give birth to that beautiful boy. And now he's a major in the Air Force, doing quite well. And he has 2 children himself. So he's been afforded a very special blessing by his mother. But today he's not talking to her. It's like the mother is something bad or evil. I don't know where people's heads are at. They change all the time. My boys have changed a lot. But I love them dearly. I don't stop at all to not want to give them love. They're good boys. It just somehow they've been misdirected about some things. I don't know. But I talk to you with a heavy heart because you guys are going through so much right now. You guys are going through so much. Your case may totally be different than mine. No 2 cases are the same. But all the cases I've heard, there is a father up in Alaska who lost his wife, who is trying to take care of his children, and he lives in a tent. You know how cold it is in Alaska to live in a tent? It's very, very cold. But he loves his children. There are grandparents that love their granddaughters or grandsons, and their own child has gone off the deep end, and they're trying. In fact, last night I talked to a mother that has custody of her child or grandchild who has ADH, meaning that he has a special child that needs special care. And social workers tried to take that child away. And after a couple months, they couldn't take care of his special needs. So they now gave her back to the grandmother who had legal custody in the first place. So, CPS is not a friend of mine. I think they need to be investigated. I think they need to meet better standards than they meet now. My social worker was a young girl, no college degree, nothing in social work, no programs or anything to know, and she was supposedly authoritative at 22. These social workers think they can clinically diagnose a parent as having a disorder or give prescriptions for drugs. They're not clinical psychiatrists. There's a special way you have to be one. And it's so sad because all she talked about was her bonus that she got from CPS and her new eyelashes, her new makeup, new clothing, her BMW car, her Gucci purse. Every week she had a new Gucci purse. And that's all she talked about. Her heart. See, social workers should have a heart. And they're going to see a lot of awful things. And I know when a social worker probably goes through, it's really hard. But they need to be trained and educated. They need to go to college. They need to take classes in social work. How to deal with society in social areas. They don't even have a license or certificate. They need one. A policeman has one. A doctor has one. You have a driver's license. A social worker should have a license or a certificate that has to be renewed to make sure they still are doing the right thing, the best care for children, but they don't. And we need to make changes. We need to make so many changes out there. Now, Rachel, you've been listening, Rachel Cooper. I still don't know what city or state. And your answer is you can't afford an attorney. I know you can't. And hopefully you can listen and learn from things from I say. Also, I hope that you can find a public defender that'll work for you. One guy said he went through 31 public defenders before he found one that worked. But you can get your kids back. I don't know what your case is about, but I know you by being in this room that you care. Rachel, you care about your children. And any of the other ones in here. There's been a half a dozen of you in this room. And you're in here trying to find answers, and I wish I could come up with the right answer. Now, I've told you about rule number 1, that you need to hire an attorney. And we have attorney Vincent W. Davis that will give you a consultation for 30 minutes at $49.99. $49.99. You just call in to 888-888-6582, and you tell them that Bob Pace sent you. And when you see Mr. Davis, you talk to him, you tell him that Bob Pace sent you. He will help you with the strategies about how to get your kids back and fighting CPS. He's very knowledgeable. You can't go wrong with him. And you'll probably retain him after you talk to him. So rule number 1, you do that. Now, I have about 20 minutes left of the show. So if anybody would like to call in and speak about their case, you're welcome to do so. You just call 626-698-0990. And you can call in to be a guest on my show. And I'll put you on voice so everybody can hear you. You won't be seen, but everybody can hear you. Now, if you want to be on the show as a regular guest at one of my 14 podcasts, you just email to Grace at vincentwdavis.com. That's Grace at vincentwdavis.com. It's displayed on your screen with a ticket running at the bottom. So that's how you can be on the show, and she'll set you up and tell you what to do. She right now is listening to the broadcast, and she's on right now. So you can email her and say, I want to be on Bob Pace's Tonight Show or tomorrow morning show or whatever the case may be. You have 14 to pick from. I did have a scheduled speaker, but apparently something happened. And sometimes people are scared, and I don't blame you. It's hard to get in front of talking that you know the whole world is listening. We've had people from Australia, Canada, United Kingdom, and Ghana listen in and text in. By the way, I've only had one text from Rachel Cooper. If any of you like to text a comment, please put your name and the city and state you're from and your question, and I'll try to help you. All you have to do is text it in. Now, I have 2 other rules. Rule number 2 is you need to take notes. You have to be very, very good about this because Your case may go longer than the 48 days they tell you that CPS case should last. Yes, they tell you it's 48 days, but my case was 3 years. 2015, the unnecessary stole my children and put them into the system so they collect their money. And then 3 years later, when I had my attorney, Vincent W. Davis, he helped me get my boys out. I lost my daughter. But I know you need notes, and I was not very good at the beginning myself taking notes because I was so caught up with unbelievable that an agency can turn your life upside down. It's a nightmare. You're like Alice in Wonderland, going through all those doors and all those falling cards and all the blank spaces and everything. It's a spaghetti of spider webs that will get you down in there. And they think they have no accountability. There's no one watches the money that's being spent. They're not transparent. They use deception. They dupe the police to help them when they don't have no rights in there. So with these notes, you write down each incident. You write down the date and time, and you write down the people involved in the incident, the social workers, the police, the parents, the children, whoever was involved. And then you want to describe the incident. You want to describe the incident, what took place, what happened. And then you want to put the outcome. And if the outcome comes later on, you can come back later and fill it out. Then skip a couple lines, put the next incident. Skip a couple lines, put the next incident. You put anything that relates to CPS there. If you want to take notes, that's a good spot to put notes. And you just highlight things you want to talk about later or help on. But with that kind of notes, you can help your attorney and help yourself find out things they did wrong. CPS does things wrong. They're not very good with what they do right now. They think every case is extreme, and they treat every case the same. Allegations come in, and you're guilty until you're proven innocent. With any other crime, you're innocent until you're proven guilty. But in CPS, you're guilty, and they take the position, CPS workers. They're mean, they're not fair, and I'm sorry to be downplaying this group of individuals, but that's based from my experience, and that's based from over 100 people I've talked to around the country. I mean, places as far as Maine, Nova Scotia, that was in Canada, and then down to Vermont and New Hampshire and Massachusetts, to Maryland, to Virginia, to Pennsylvania, to Florida, to Alabama, Georgia, Kentucky, Tennessee, to Texas, up to Ohio, to Minnesota, to even the Rosebud Reservation in South Dakota, the Lakota Sioux. And before I forget that, is I want to bring up one thing that happens at the safety meeting. At the safety meeting, when they've taken your kids, that happens within the first week, you're supposed to help them determine where to place the kids on a temporary basis. And most of the time, it's going to be with your family, like your grandparents, your aunts and uncles. They'll be over the age of 21 that has able to take care of your kids. That is the primary choice. And you make sure that you give them a list of names that can do so. But if you're a Native American Indian, the first immigrants that came over from Asia to Alaska to North America and then migrated down to Central America and South America, these first immigrants, the Native American Indians, had a law passed in 1979. And there's been a lot of laws passed about the American Indians. And they've been abused and so forth. But this act of 1979 was the ICWA, the Indian Child Welfare Act, ICWA, Indian Child Welfare Act, which says any American Indian children should be placed with a tribal family, not with CPS. The reason being is that for a long period, in the 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s, Indian children were gobbled up into foster care. It was real easy to get a child that way. They found that the Indian children would not be returned to their family. So with the ICWA, they're able to be in a family of Indians who will take care of them and return them to their family. So look that up. Look up that act. That's a real important act. The ICWA Act, the Indian Child Welfare Act. So we're now close to the time. We have about 10 minutes left here of my podcast. I've talked about Rule 1, about getting an attorney. Rule 2, to take notes. Now I want to talk about rule number 3. Rule number 3 is that you should not talk to social workers or police about CPS matters. Why? Because you'll say something and they'll use it against you. Also, there's nothing that says you do have to. In fact, if you're approached by a police or a social worker about your children, you should right away tell them that I'll have my attorney contact you. You need to impress upon the fact that you have an attorney. You may not have one, they may not know, but you can say they will contact you, because what they prey on is people without attorneys, people that are broke. Because if you're broke, you won't get an attorney. And if you don't have an attorney, they can take advantage of you. They took advantage of me. So I should have said no to social workers. I should not talk to them. Same goes for the police. Because the police, in our case, not only did he help them come into my home, he went ahead and trumped up charges that are similar to CPS. And he made them criminal charges. They're unfounded. He made up criminal charges unfounded. So here he is. The social workers have charges, and then they have charges. And you know what the social workers said? We're not going to do anything about your charges until your criminal charges are taken care of. So that delayed another year. And they said to themselves, oh, goody, goody, goody. We get that $20,000 a month per child. That's how bad and corrupt the social workers are. Meanwhile, our families, my wife's families, my family tried to, but they're dying. And my mom and dad died, never knowing about Kirsten. It's a hard thing to try to keep and suppress your feelings sometimes when you talk about people in general. I have AT&T. Can you get a child back at a adjunctory hearing? Yes, you can. You can get a child back at any time. In fact, there's a form called a 388. It's a motion to have a hearing by the judge about new information, about you completed your programs, your parenting classes. You have done everything asked and you want to talk to the judge. That's a motion at 388. And you can get back your child at any time you want. You can file that 388 motion and have a hearing with the judge. That's how you can get there. AT&T, what city and state are you from? What city and state are you from? I have about 5 minutes. We were talking about rule number 3, about saying no to social workers. Do not let them in your home. They will use things in your home against you. They did in my case. They used my parents' belongings against us. That's how they're able to get our children. And they also said it was imminent danger, my parents' belongings. Imminent danger. Imminent danger means life or threat. If there's a gunshot going off, people using guns, people banging kids against walls, that's imminent danger. But to have personal belongings that you're trying to organize and distribute there isn't so. So you just say no. Don't let them in the house. You don't have to give them permission. Now, if they have a warrant, it has to be signed by a judge. It has specifically the name who they're trying to investigate. They need to have the allegations on there. They need to have the current date they're going to go into the home, the address of the home, and it has to be signed with a wet signature by a judge. A lot of times, the social workers will waive something that you haven't seen. You need to see it. You need to read it. Also, they try to do it on the weekend. They can't get a judge's signature on the weekend. Also, the signature is not wet. They must have used a stack of photocopies of warrants. They need to have a warrant. You need to exercise your rights. You need to call your attorney. You need to tell them you have an attorney. So whatever you do, do not talk to them. Do not let them in your home. That's rule number 3. I'm telling you that. Do not do that. We're getting close to the end of my morning broadcast. I hope I've shared some light on things you can do and not do. I hope that you call Mr. Davis for that $49.99 30-minute consultation and talk to him. It's so important to have that because you won't be able to do your open heart surgery yourself. It's too complicated. CPS is not your friend. Allegations should be made in writing and signed. They should never be called in. It's real easy to call in and do a false allegations. And there are a lot of you that expressed false allegations. I had false allegations too. We had false allegations that are not true. And CPS duped me and duped my family and took my family down. They're not around here today to help me. As soon as they got the money, they ran with their money. If I had the money, I'd sue them, but I spent all my money defending and getting my children back. You cannot sue them unless the case is over. Well, yes, but you need to be a really good attorney to sue them because they have the millions of dollars, the billions of dollars to fight you. They are just unstoppable. And it's so sad out there that we're going through really hard times. My wife does a lot of prayers. She's a prayer warrior. And she says that the world is going through some very hard times coming up. And so she's a prayer warrior. She's a loving woman. And what can I say? 32 years is a long time. I miss my family. My daughter that's not at home. It's really sad to say. I wanted to get better. I wanted to get better. I want you all to continue to fight your case, not give up. Know that you're here because you love your children, that you care about your children. Do everything they ask. Be polite and do everything that you ask. And you will get your children back. I hope to see you all at my next broadcast this evening. Hopefully one of you will be a guest speaker and can speak tonight. Please write an email to grace@vincentwdavis.com so you could be a guest there. I want to thank the 2 people that text in. Rachel Cooper, who can't afford an attorney. I hope you can. And then AT&T talks about getting a child back at a judiciary hearing. Yes, you can. I want to thank those people. I want to thank all the people that are in this room. I want to thank the thumbs up and the loves and the smiles that you've shown. It's appreciated. I hope the new year is much success and brings you much happiness. I want to say, God bless you all, and good. I'll see you tonight. Bob Pace signing off.